What's good, family? So mash the like button, subscribe, and lick off the bell. Wow, your man's Andre SOG Ward has been airing out going to war with Eddie Hearn. So, after Fury and Wilder 3, Eddie Hearn, doing his thing for his mans, Diliian Whyte, came out and basically said, Fury, all fans, right now, should be pressuring Tyson Fury to fight his mandatory challenger, Diliian Whyte. At which point, Andre Ward came through and said, Eddie, stop it. Eddie Hearn replied saying, stop it. If not Diliian Whyte, name a better fight for Tyson Fury. Andre Ward said, why would Fury be looking for a big or better fight? He just competed in the biggest fight that the division had to offer in terms of relevance. You rest after a war like Saturday night. Wait for the winner, then ride off into the sunset. Undisputed or bust. Good game plan? Question mark. Eddie Hearn replied, because it could be close to a year between fights for him again that way. He's had 2 fights in 2 years. Your plan would give him 3 fights in 3 years. Plus Diliian Whyte is mandatory. Why not face him, especially when it's a big money fight? He's talked about how he's hated the inactivity. So that's what Eddie Hearn said. Now, before we go on, I get the feeling that Andre Ward is almost shilling. Initially, it feels like Andre Ward was basically saying, Tyson Fury is the main man. He doesn't need to, he's the king. He doesn't need to fight peasants. But now, looking at the words that Andre Ward uses, I'm convinced it's because Andre Ward, he followed a particular career plan. Yeah, really, Andre Ward fought one decent fighter in his whole career, honestly speaking. Yeah, he fought Kovalev, that's it. So, Andre Ward looks at Tyson Fury's career, and it's very lean. He's got Klitschko and Wilder, that's it. So Andre Ward, looking at his own career, having only beaten one man in Kovalev, he thinks, oh, yeah, if more people can do what I did, have one good fight and then run away from Alvarez, yeah? Have one good fight and then run away from Canelo Alvarez. Why not do that? So Andre, just because you ran off, had one decent fight and ran off, don't mean that's what should happen in standard. Because to be honest with you, what's holding your career back? The reason no one don't mention your name, Andre, no one ever lie, no one knows your name, because you didn't have the consistency. You was out of the ring for a whole bag of time. Wasn't your fault, but nonetheless, you didn't. It's not like you was out of the ring for loads of time and you thought, let me make it up. No, you was out of the ring for a load of time, caught up with contractual issues, and then you had one decent fight and ran off. That's not what greatness is. Now, I'm not saying you want greatness, but the fact you're trying to make up that it's the smart thing or not the smart thing, it's the fact you're trying to make out it's like a real super duper great thing to do. Fighters aren't meant to have more than one fight every 20 years, and Fury should be looking to ride off into the sunset after one more What's that about? So what? What happened to the days? I remember people at Holyfield, he had 2 fights with Mike Tyson, 3 fights with Lennox Lewis. God knows what else he was doing, Riddick Bowe or whoever else. You know what I'm saying? These men had trilogies, doubles and trilogies with back-to-back mans. Not one done and then ran off. What's wrong with you? Yeah? That's the history you're coming up against. So, for me, it just doesn't wash. I agree with Eddie Hearn. Not because, obviously, Eddie Hearn's just trying to shill for his man, but I agree from a boxing point of view. Fury, bear in mind as well, Andre, before this fight, Fury was saying he wants Diliian Whyte in December. Now, obviously, that was probably some hyperbole. But, nonetheless, not being funny, Diliian Whyte is a big money fight, and I don't think it's that much of a hard fight. I really don't. I've seen Diliian Whyte go 50-50 with no good Joseph Parker. I've seen Diliian Whyte go 50-50 with Chisora twice. Yeah? Diliian Whyte ain't all that. I mean, I can't even lie to you. I'm not confident you're going to get through this Otto Wallin fight. I've got a bad feeling about this one. I really have. So we may not be talking about the fight anyway. But Fury should be rock hard for this, in my opinion. At this point. Because Fury, myself included, has won over a lot of people with given his antics. The last thing he wants to do, not like he needs his haters or whatever, but I'm just saying, why your legacy at the moment, it's patchy. You're in, you're out, it's just messy. And the thing is, the heavyweight division today, it's not dense enough where you need to hang around for 20 years. Realistically, you only need 2-3 years of hard work. What have you got? Diliian out the way. Yeah? The Usyk winner out the way. There's 18 months. AJ out the way. There's 2 years. Who else you got? That's about it, innit? Really? You could get the whole game wrapped up in 2 years. You got one Diliian Whyte fight, that's 6 months. You got 2 Usyk fights potentially, that's 12 months. You got one AJ fight, or 2 AJ fights maybe, there's 2.5 years. And by the way, people, that's 2.5 years based on 2 fights per year. That's not busy. Once every 6 months. You could get it wrapped up in 18 months if you wanted to be rock hard for it. And treat him like a training session, which by the way, I think they probably would be, truth be known. Diliian Whyte training session for Fury. I'm sorry, I just don't see it myself. I just don't see it. Yeah, unless Diliian Whyte shows something magical in a Wallin fight, I'm just not convinced. Yeah, he looked good against Povetkin, but Povetkin was useless and shot to bits as well. Diliian Whyte needs to show something special in the Otto Wallin fight to convince me of anything. When it comes to Fury, that is. But we'll see. Maybe Diliian I just can't see. Yeah, we'll see anyway. But I think Fury's attributes can be too much, too long, and too whatever. I think Diliian gets away. Diliian does alright because he's normally the bigger man. If that makes sense. When he's in there with Povetkin and that, he has all the edges. But anyway, you heard there from obviously Andre Ward, and Andre Ward also went on to say a few more things. Check this out. A commenter replied and said, "If Usyk AJ2 was sooner, I'd agree. But 1, that fight won't be until late March or early April, according to Hearn. And 2, Fury said he hates being inactive. If Fury wants to be active, a fight with Whyte in May still gives him 7 months between fights, and it sets up undisputed next fall." Andre Ward said, "All of this would make sense if Fury wasn't involved in a brutal war on Saturday night. If you've ever been in a tough professional boxing match, you'd understand. Well, I'm afraid to say, Andre Ward, you went the first man to be in a tough professional boxing fight, and it weren't that tough. I'm sorry. It weren't that. From Fury's point of view, from Wilder's point of view, I can see why he may be needing some time off. But from Fury's point of view, the 2 knockdowns, they weren't... Fury didn't get knocked down as the result of, wow, he got pounded for 4 rounds and then finally gave over. Fury got knocked down because of heavyweight boxing. It was almost like Lewis versus Rahman. It was one of them knockdowns, apart from Lewis went spark out kind of thing. It was one of them flash ones. Fury got put down twice with a flash knockdown. It wasn't heavy. Fury took literally 2 shots the whole night, more or less. It felt like to me anyway. He took about 3 shots the whole night, and 2 of them put him down. That was it. He really wasn't... It wasn't that close. It wasn't that much of a war from his point of view, I don't believe. Not enough to need more than 6 months off anyway. What is this thing? It's just like... I'm sorry, but for me, it's this new school funny style thing. Oh, we need 6 months off. How did everyone else manage to do it then? 6 months is plenty of time. Plenty of time. For that kind of fight, from Fury's point of view. 100%. But again, it's because of Andre Ward. And how his career went. He wants everyone to be like him. Be a one and done. Because you had one decent fight against Kovalev. Literally one. Because you got beat in the first fight. And then you had one decent fight in the rematch and you ran off. Because you saw Alvarez coming up and you thought, you know what? Don't fancy that. I'm out of here. Yeah? Simple as that. Because I've told you before, Andre. If you want to be known as great, what you need to do is dust your boots off. Come back in. And what you need to do is, like I said, get your lipstick out for Alvarez. And if Alvarez don't want it, then you can basically put that name on your record. That's what you should do. Andre Ward should come back, have a warm-up fight, and then say, Alvarez, I'm giving you 6 months. If you don't want it, I'm putting your name on my resume. And I'd back that 100%. If Alvarez didn't want it, I'd put his name on his resume and he can walk off into the sunset. At least then he'll have 2 names, Kovalev and a stoppage over Alvarez. Simple as that. Because at that point, if Ward came back at 38 and Alvarez didn't want it, then I'm sorry, that for me would be a loss on his record. Alvarez really is my favourite fighter, but at this point, they both could do with each other. Not because Andre Ward's a massive name, but that would be a big one. I think that's the only real fight I want for Alvarez right now. Two relatively undefeated men going in there. Alvarez would have the age and the youth. And Andre Ward would have the natural size at 175. Because there's nothing else really going on for Alvarez right now. I mean, not even right now. For the next 3 years, I can't see nothing. There's no real interesting contest, is there? There's no Triple G kind of contest. Is there? That for me, Alvarez versus Triple G was a Hall of Fame fight. Alvarez ain't got no more of them. It's a shame. It's not his fault, but nonetheless, it is a shame. But Andre Ward, he didn't want to do that. You see, he wants to run off. Have one good win and run off. Anyway, check this out. Here's some more evidence. Andre Ward says, I don't think I'm arguing. Here's what's universal. What is your desire to keep fighting after you've reached the pinnacle? The toll on your body, the sacrifice of leaving your family. No fighter can get around answering these questions. Well, what do you mean, reach the pinnacle? It depends on how you define the pinnacle. Is the pinnacle having one good win over Kovalev? That, to you it was, but to everyone else, they look at that like, oh, that's one good fight. Ward, you had one good fight, and you ran off. Because who else have you beat? What, Carl Froch? Come on, man, get serious now. Yeah? Carl Froch is alright, but he ain't no Hall of Famer, is he? Who did you beat? No one. That's a fact as well. Hate to break it to you, but it's the bottom line. You didn't beat no one, apart from Kovalev. Yeah? So, that's not the pinnacle, I'm afraid. Pinnacle would have been staying around a bit longer and really putting your resume out there. I mean, when you think about people like, I'm trying to think about 175, but I don't know. When you think about, I mean, even what happened to you and Stevenson? What happened to that? That fight was there. But anyway, when you think historically, people like Roy Jones and them, man. I know he was 160, 168, but it's all the same kind of stuff. Look at their resumes. Their resumes were thick. And I understand, to be fair, them times in the 90s, there was much more, it was much denser back then. But that's in a way what should force these dudes to stay around longer. It's not like Ward had a whole load of killers in his division. You could have just sat around, fought once a year and kicked over. You know what I mean? Keeping your name out there. And chalking souls onto your resume. But you didn't, you ran off. And now, we don't really know how good you was. Because you only had one good fight. Or one good win, rather. I know people are going to be mad and big mad, but it's the facts. I don't lie. Ward's had one Hall of Fame win. And then to add insult to injury, well, to be fair, Alvarez made a lot harder work of Kovalev than Ward did. Ward got him out there a lot quicker. So that's why I give Ward I give him that win. Say fair play to him. But I mean, there's some more tweets here. He says, Fury can do whatever he wants to do at this point. He doesn't need any other fighter. If he chooses to fight a few more years or take a few more fights and walk, it's totally up to him. One thing you can't argue is that are not many real challenges left. Well, it depends on what you call many challenges. I told you before. Diliian, AJ, Usyk, Joe Joyce. I know Joyce doesn't have the name. To be honest with you, I wouldn't blame Fury at this point for ducking Joyce. But who knows? In 2 years from now, let's say Fury cleans up AJ, Diliian, and Usyk. Yeah, 2 years from now, I'd like to think Joyce would be more or less in that position. But that for me would really be the run. I'm not interested in no one else. Joyce, Usyk, AJ, and Diliian. If Fury got through them, man, in my opinion, he'd be in my. I'd have to put him in top 5 all time. I'd have to put him there somewhere. If he got through that, especially, I mean, if he knocked them all out as well. If Fury stops all them, man, he'll have to go maybe even higher than top 5 because Ali didn't stop everyone, did he? And I'm not saying they're certified, but if Fury doesn't lose to any of these man and knocks them all out, then he'd have to be probably top 3 all time. Who knows? Maybe even harder than that. Maybe even number one. I don't know. I'd have to watch how he performs. But if for example, if Fury gets all these men out there within 8 rounds, then it's going to be hard to argue. Because yeah, you can say, well, he goes down, he's chinny because he goes down, but he gets up, so it doesn't matter. And the more I've watched, or the more I've learned, I've seen people like AJ who are scared to go down. Yeah, I used to laugh at Fury for going down, but really, I know it's cliche, but it's not how you go down; it's how you get up. What's the point of having a great chin, or what I perceive to be? I used to think AJ had an all right chin, but whatever. The point is, what's the point of having a great chin if you ain't gonna use it? If you're just gonna shit your pants and hide behind whatever, there's no point, is there? What's the point having heavy shots if you don't want to throw them? What's the point being designed to be aggressive and your back end's going from the first bell? AJ, oops, yeah. So it's all well and good. If you don't want to use the gifts you've got, you can't get praise for that. So yeah, obviously your man's Andre Ward. He's chilling right now. He mad. He trying to drag everyone down to his level. Yeah, he wants everyone to be a one and done. Oh look, I beat one guy and I've run off. Yeah, I'm the greatest ever. But it didn't really work like that. Yeah, not from a purist point of view. Obviously, from Andre Ward's deluded and biased point of view, it works, but for no one else does it work. No doubt.